To underestimate the extent, value, or importance of someone or something is to underrate. Following a 54-win season, which resulted in the Denver Nuggets falling one game short of the Western Conference Finals and to match up with the eventual finalists, the Golden State Warriors, the Nuggets entered the 2020 NBA season with newfound expectations. Nikola Jokic had established himself as a superstar player and the league's best center, following an MVP level year and an incredible 14-game playoff stretch, which saw him record averages of 25, 13 and 8 on over 50% from the field and a touch under 40% from 3. Now here's the list of players that have recorded averages of 20, 10 and 8 over the course of at least 10 playoff games. Oscar Robertson, Wilt Chamberlain, LeBron James. This isn't someone that was in the prime of their career, heading into their 8th postseason or 7th postseason. This is someone that was playing playoff basketball for the first time in their career and put up numbers that we haven't seen since LeBron James in 2015. That's just how good he was. We hear the talk about how teams such as the Bucks, Lakers, Clippers, Rockets, and even Celtics are in a position to make a tilt at the title because of the superstar players in the ranks of each of these teams. But yet I rarely hear a narrative that suggests Jokic could be the best player on the court when matched up against any number of these teams, when in reality, there is every possibility he could prove to be just that. Now, just before I get into the video, if you could drop a like right now, that would be much appreciated. These videos do take a fair bit of time as I try to make the best content possible. Anyways, let's get back into it. A Western Conference that was already considered incredibly competitive was turned up a notch when a host of star players moved teams and formed some incredibly dangerous lineups. With these newly formed rosters, Denver were yet again out of the spotlight and not seen as the championship contender that a number of these other teams had been coined following busy off-seasons. Despite very little hype surrounding the Nuggets, they continued to prove themselves as a team that belonged atop the Western Conference, recording 43 of a possible 65 wins prior to the break, and sitting just 1.5 games behind the heavily favoured Clippers. We're now fast approaching the resumption of the NBA season, and it is certainly seen as no surprise to me that the Nuggets are receiving incredibly little attention despite being one of the best teams during the regular season for the second consecutive year. Heading to Orlando following the circumstances, there is more unknown than ever before. How will these players perform following such an extensive break? Will it have a negative or positive effect on their performance? Only time will tell. Some players took the break as an opportunity to rest and recuperate following a season which inevitably left their body with several aches and pains like NBA seasons so often do, and some even went to the extreme with several stars quoted saying they didn't pick up a basketball for several months. However, two players that were not interested in taking the break to rest were the Nuggets stars Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. Murray was quoted saying, "Me and Joker have been in Denver this whole time working out." Now, there has been so much made of the significant weight Jokic has lost over the break. Some have questioned if the lack of weight will be detrimental when it comes to excelling in the post, which he's been able to do over the last couple of years. However, I struggle to see the weight loss as anything other than a positive. We've heard from Murray that he and the Joker were not playing around and were intent on building over the break as opposed to standing still. And I just can't see how the face of the franchise in Jokic wouldn't have had significant consultations with coaching staff and physical staff when deciding to make such a significant physical change. People have talked about how this physical change could be detrimental in a few ways, but from a positive sense, this will improve Jokic's lateral movement, which will prove beneficial on the offensive side and defensive side of the floor. His conditioning will likely be far superior than it has ever been before, which will mean he can continue to be the focal point of an offense that is shaped around his talents, and we will certainly see him run the floor more fluidly and potentially get more lift in his jumper, which can sometimes fall short as a result of fatigue. Already one of the best 5 to 10 players in the league, Jokic has likely improved his game significantly, and to the chemistry that he and Murray demonstrated in last year's playoffs, where they seemingly took turns taking over games, is seemingly in a better position than it has ever been before, and that shouldn't be undersold. But let's shift our focus from the two stars of the team and focus on the other aspects of Denver basketball that could translate to playoff series wins. Now, one of the biggest positives about the Nuggets is their depth. Outside of the solidified starting five in Jokic, Millsap, Harris, Barton, and Murray, they have players that wouldn't look out of place in a number of starting lineups coming off their bench. Jeremy Grant is the embodiment of what you want from your 3-and-D guy. He's shooting 3.5 threes per game and knocking down a fantastic 40% of those attempts. In addition to this great shooting, Grant has become an incredibly important asset for the Nuggets following their troubles slowing down some of the league's best wing players. Now, Grant will more than likely be one of a number of players that would have the job on the likes of PG-13, LeBron, or Kawhi if the Nuggets were to advance. And speaking of matching up against the league's best wings, Torrey Craig is another one of the impressive players off the Nuggets bench that can be particularly impactful on the defensive end. 6'7", 220 pounds, Craig has the physical traits to match up with some of the most talented wings, and has shown the desire to match up against the West's superstar players. And this is incredibly important, because Denver will be forced to throw a number of different matchups at the likes of Kawhi and LeBron in the hopes of slowing them down and preventing them from dominating games like they have done all throughout their postseason career. In addition to these defensive-minded role players, Denver has one of the highest upside young players heading into the bubble. There has been much made of the improvements certain players may have made to their game over the break from a physical or skill set standpoint, and one of those players who certainly has considerable intrigue over how much he has improved over this time off is Michael Porter Jr. Coming off a serious injury, the 2019 season was the first season of basketball Porter Jr. had played in 2 years, and he had to be integrated into a lineup that had fantastic depth, as I have mentioned. So it was understandable to see him eased into the season with limited minutes and a limited role. However, after easing into the season, we got a glimpse of just how talented the 22-year-old is during the month of January. Over the course of January, MPJ was playing absurdly well for a rookie, seeing a major increase in playing time, and as a result production. He averaged over 12 points per game and just under 7 rebounds on ridiculous shooting splits from the field and from 3. However, just as he was becoming a huge X factor for the Nuggets, he suffered an ankle injury and didn't rediscover the same form over the following 2 months. Fast forward to the present day, he's had plenty of time to not only recover from any lingering ailments, but build physically. If MPJ can rediscover that incredibly efficient scoring punch off the bench, that would go an incredibly long way to making the Nuggets even more of a force than they currently are. Teams would want to watch out. There are a host of teams in the West that have seen major improvements on the back of marquee signings or trades. You look at LeBron James and Anthony Davis becoming the inevitable force we expected them to become out in LA. And then you have Kawhi, who is quietly having an MVP level season for the Clippers this year after being last season's best playoff performer and earning finals MVP honors for his second team. And you have paired that with one of last year's best regular season performers in PG, whose playoff performances were derailed by a shoulder injury which should now be fully healed over a year later. You then have Houston, Dallas, and OKC, who have all had great seasons. Dallas and OKC have been majorly helped by the development of young stars in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Luka Doncic, in addition to stars in Kristaps Porzingis and Chris Paul joining their respective franchises. And then you have Houston, who have been a threat out west for multiple years now, with a unique system and a backcourt consisting of 2 former MVPs and 2 of the NBA's best players. A common argument against the Nuggets being one of the major contenders is experience. Do they have the experience to compete with the likes of LeBron, James Harden, Kawhi Leonard? It's a valid question, but in response to that question, the Nuggets are the only contender in the West that are just coming off several playoff games last year with the same group of core players and the same group of star players. They are a team without egos. They are a team that has improved each season since 2015. They are a team with confidence that they can win the championship. Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic have never been short of confidence, and their players backed that up. But you add pieces around them in Millsap, Harris, Barton, Grant, Morris, and others that know their role and have absolutely no problems executing their role routinely, and you add to the mix one of the NBA's brightest young talents and a huge unknown heading to Orlando. Can Porter Jr. provide the incredibly efficient 12 to 15 points per game he was giving the Nuggets prior to his injury? Could we see him exceed those expectations and break out right in front of our eyes? The Denver Nuggets are a team with the right combination of known quantities, players that will perform their roles that you can depend on in the playoffs, and in combination with these known quantities, they have more room for growth than any of the other top seeds in the NBA. You look at the Clippers, the Lakers, the Bucks, the Raptors, and so on. These are all fantastic teams with great players, But do they have a Michael Porter Jr. that showed flashes of being a star? A Jamal Murray who is still raring to break out as someone who is only 23 and coming off the first playoff experience of his career, and one of the best 5 to 10 players in the league who has seemingly just made the biggest physical change of anyone in the NBA after having an all-NBA season. You can understand why these teams in big markets and these teams with superstar players are favoured to win the NBA championship. It's the safe option, and it's a good option considering their performances thus far. But I see a Nuggets team that have a rare combination of depth and upside that could provide major headaches for opposing teams in Orlando. And even if we don't see major improvement, this is still a team that is 97-50 in the regular season over the last 2 years, and a team that warrants respect as a title contender, something they just haven't been getting.